Today on Hebrew Grammar Help, numbers. Numbers that are bigger than the teens. Shalom and welcome back to Hebrew Grammar Help. I'm Sapir and today I'm going to talk about numbers. Alright folks, last week I was talking about numbers and then my video was way too long, so I had to split it in two. So this week I'm talking about numbers that are bigger than the teens. So from 20 all the way up, and then a couple more issues about numbers, and then next week I will be talking about how we use the letters of the alphabet to mean numbers and how that whole system works. So 10, remember, is eser in the feminine and asara in the masculine. Now the rest of the multiples of 10 are only going to have one form because they're not in the ones place. It's only 1 through 19 and then numbers in the ones place that have a masculine versus a feminine. Alright, so here's the multiples of 10. Of course, we have, as I mentioned, eser and asara. And then 20 is esrim. Esrim. That's the only one that's a little bit different from the rest of them. Basically, all of them are going to sound like the number that's in the tens place and with like an im ending. The only one that's not like that is 20, which is esrim. It's almost like tens. It looks like it means tens, and it is. It's two tens, which is 20. So 20 is esrim, and then shloshim, arba'im, chamishim, shishim, shiv'im, shmonim, and tish'im. All of the numbers in the ones place, even further on, if there is a digit that is not 0 in the ones place, then you will be saying it either masculine or feminine depending on what you are counting. So whenever you're doing any number and you're adding, and you've got like a compound number, right? You've got 21 or 33 or 542. Basically, you're going to put a v, meaning and, in between the second to last and the last numbers. When you do this, you're going to need to think of the teens as a single number. So, achat esrei is like one unit. So you have to think of them that way, and that way if you have a number like 3,212, you know to put the and before the stem of stem esrei. So all of the other numbers that are just two digits are just going to have the multiple of 10 number, and then the word and, or the prefix and, attached to the last digit, the ones digit. What I'm about to say is kind of grammar-y, sticklery. This is not necessarily a hard and fast rule for street Hebrew. There are some people who are sticklers, right? And they might try to correct you, and you might be like, oh, why? I don't understand. So I will explain this here. I've done a whole video on the vet, on like the boom-off rule, I think. If I haven't done it already, it's in the works. But I know I've talked about the boom-off rule before. So the boom-off rule says that the vav that normally sounds like ve and means and, changes to an oo sound before any of the letters that make up the made-up word boomaf, which are bet, vav, mem, and pei, or before a word that starts with a letter that has a schwa under it. And so for this reason, you might hear people saying esrim veshtaim, but it's more correct to say esrim ushtaim, because the sheen of shtaim has a schwa under it. This rule can be difficult to remember, and especially when you're talking quickly, you might forget, oh, does my word start with a schwa? Right? It can be hard to remember when you're talking. And so people do use it wrong all the time. And in fact, if so many people use it wrong, then it's not really wrong, is it? It's just more casual, less formal speech. But you'll get those, grammar police who might tell you, oh, you said esrim veshtaim, it should have been ushtaim. So let's go through the 20s in masculine and in feminine. Esrim ve'achat, esrim ushtaim, esrim ve'shalosh, esrim ve'arba, esrim ve'chamesh, esrim ve'shesh, esrim ve'sheva, esrim u'shmone, esrim ve'tesha. Okay, we hear that shtayim and shmone both get the u in front of them because they both have a sheen. It doesn't matter that it's a sheen, it's that it's its first letter that has a schwa under it. All right, let's do the 20s in masculine. Esrim ve'achad, esrim u'shnaim, esrim u'shlosha, esrim ve'arba'a, esrim ve'chamisha, esrim ve'shisha, esrim ve'shiv'a, esrim u'shmona, esrim ve'tish'a. So we heard that in masculine, it's not just 22 and 28, it's also 23, because now that sheen of shalosh doesn't have the a vowel under it anymore. It has the schwa under it, shlosha. And I hope you noticed that esrim did not change at all throughout that both of those lists. It was esrim on the feminine side and on the masculine side. All right, moving on to bigger numbers. The word for 100 or just 100 is me'a. Me'a. And it ends with a kamatz hey. And what does that tell you? That this is a feminine word. It's actually very much a noun, meaning 100. I don't know. It acts like a noun. And so because of that, when we want to say 300, 400, 500, 600, we're going to use the feminine versions of 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So, shalosh me'ot, arba me'ot, chamesh me'ot. Me'ot means hundreds. It's the plural version of 100. So you're saying 300s, 400s, 500s. And you can also use me'ot all by itself to mean hundreds. There were hundreds of people. Hayu me'ot anashim. Now, why did I start with 300 and not with 200? Because 200 is different. It is one of those words, 100 is one of those words that can have a dual form. And in fact, not just can, it must. So to say 200, we cannot ever, 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 ever say anything like shte me'ot. That would definitely be very, very wrong. The way to say 200 is metaim. 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 And it's just 100 plus the dual ending. Ai. So sorry, I had to redo the audio for this part, so that's why you don't hear the background noise. So for the hundreds, not only are we using the feminine versions of the 3 through 9 words, if it's 300, 400, 500, but it's also a slightly shortened version of 3 of the numbers. And I think these are also a smichut form. So it happens with shalosh, sheva, and tesha. Instead of shalosh, that first vowel of all 3 of these, the first vowel gets shortened to a schwa. So it's going to be shlosh, shva, and cha. So here is now again the list of the hundreds. Mea, metaim, shlosh me'ot, arba me'ot, chamesh me'ot, shesh me'ot, shva me'ot, shmone me'ot, cha me'ot. Whatever the last number is, even if your last number is like in the tens place because there's a 0 in the ones place, you're going to put your vav, sounding like ve or like u, before the tens place. So if you want to say 120, it's mea ve'esrim. Okay, so the point here is that whichever is the last element that you are specifically stating in a number, before that is going to be a vav. So if you are saying 120, then you get a vav right before the 20. So mea ve'esrim. But if you're saying 123, now the 3 is the last element. So mea esrim ve'shalosh. You're not going to say mea ve'esrim ve'shalosh. It's too many vavs in there. So the vav only goes before the very last element. But remember what I said about the teens, that the whole teen number is considered one element. So mea ve'shmonesre. Okay. I remember learning technically in English, we are not supposed to put an and in between the 100 after the hundreds. 120, not 120. But of course, we always say 120, right? We don't follow that rule. All right, let's move on to thousands. Word for thousand is elef. It is like mea, it's treated as a noun, but this one is now a masculine noun. And for some reason, we are using the smichut form of the masculine numbers if we have more than 2 thousands. Thousands, just like with hundreds, if you have 2 of them, you're going to use the dual form. So elef is 1,000, alpayim is 2,000. The pei also gets a dagesh in it, so it sounds like a P and not like an F. So elef, alpayim. Now starting with 3, we're going to use the masculine smichut form. Shloshet alafim. Then for 4,000, arba'at alafim. Chameshet alafim. Sheshet alafim. שבעת אלפים, שמונת אלפים, תשעת אלפים, עשרת אלפים. Now, for numbers that are bigger, if you have bigger numbers of thousands, you're just going to use whatever the masculine number is and then a singular elef. So, 21,000, 21,000. 54,000, 54,000. All right, millions and billions, they didn't talk about them in the Bible. So these are just borrowed words. Millón for million. And then they don't say billion, they say milliard for billion. Milliard. And these words do not, they're both masculine. They're both treated like masculine nouns, but we don't do the same thing as we do with hundreds and thousands, where we make it like a plural. And so also the 2 million and 2 billion does not use the dual ending. So you don't say anything like millionayim. We say 2 million, 3 million, 4 million, 5 million, and so on. When it comes to writing numbers, you might be thinking, well, we've got a right to left writing situation. Maybe we write the numbers backwards, or how do we write the numbers? No, the numbers, when any number that you see written, even if it's got dashes in between because it's like a telephone number or something like that, when you see that number written, it will look exactly the same as the way we write it when we're writing left to right. And I'd like to thank an anonymous Redditor for asking this question, because it didn't dawn on me to think about this. But they weren't anonymous, I just can't remember who they were. They asked the Israelis, when you are writing these numbers, do you start from the ones place, since you're writing from right to left? Do you just continue on writing from right to left, or do you kind of skip over to the left where that number is going to begin? And everyone who answered said that they basically write a number the way that we would write it. So if you were trying to say, like, Yesh li alpayim sfarim, I have 2,000 books, and you're gonna write the 2,000, you're gonna write Yesh li, and then you're gonna give yourself enough space for 4 digits plus a little comma in there, and you're gonna start over at the 2, and then your comma, and then your 0, 0, 0. And almost everybody claimed that they usually miscalculated how much space they were going to need. And also, if you are typing, the exact same thing will happen. If you are typing in Hebrew, and all of a sudden you start typing numbers, it will put them all in left to right order for you. All right, I hope I didn't miss anything. I feel like there's also ordinal numbers and fractions and stuff like that, but I think that is for another day. That's a video for another day, because this video is going to get too long if I try to cover everything. So that is it for today. Thank you so much for watching. Now you know so much about numbers. If you have any questions or feedback, please leave it in the comments. And as always, if you have any grammar situation that has you flummoxed, let me know in the comments and I will do my best to do a video. Hit like if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe and hit the notification bell if you want to see more. Lehitraot, Papa Ama Ba'a. See you next time.